My writing process is different for every book. Every book has a different starting point. So something like my novel Fagamuffin, the initial idea was of a man so closeted or so unable to admit his sexuality that he would rather go to jail for rape, he's falsely accused of being raping a girl, than exonerate himself by admitting he's gay. And then the other element around that time, which was 2015, was there was a lot of demonisation of migrants. So I really wanted to have a protagonist who was a refugee and compel the reader to identify with him and follow his journey. The other thing I was interested in that was exploring, as you know, black people are much more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I was interested in the idea of whether someone who believed in spirit possession and the ancestors could oppose the bad voices of the schizophrenia with the good voices of the ancestors. So those were the two ideas there. My novel Soldier was about a gay former child soldier, which was that was an imagistic thing. It was inspired by those crazy images from the Civil War in Liberia of young men on roadblocks wearing wedding dresses and blonde wigs, and that idea that as society collapses, your identity might become more fluid and collapse. And that became a short film first, which directed by Ricky Beadle-Blair, and won some awards, and then I kind of wanted to explore what the characters, what the rest of their lives were, what happened next. I write a lot of drafts because I'm quite a perfectionist, and I'm also quite unusually able to self-edit. So a lot of people can't seem to make judgments about whether something even makes sense or not. Whereas I'm quite able to take a detached view of my own writing and slay my darlings, as I think it was George Orwell said, of one's fine phrases that don't really contribute to a dynamic story. So that's quite typical for me. Yeah, a lot of redrafts over a fairly compressed period, after leaving a gap between the first draft and the next one, so you can take a detached view of it and read it as if written by somebody else. I actually try not to really have rituals around writing. I think anything that can become an alibi for not cracking on is probably not very helpful. I don't really get writer's block, but when I'm struggling to think of a way forward, I find that writing by hand is a really good way of freeing up the mind. So there's something about seeing the errors and seeing a progression of ideas that I find quite helpful. Sometimes music helps, because music takes the top off your mind in some ways. So if you're thinking about shopping lists or phone calls you have to make or business emails you have to do, it shuts that part of the brain up. But sometimes when I'm trying to balance prose rhythm subtly within a line or a paragraph, of course having something with its own rhythm banging away is unhelpful. And then you go, okay, now I need silence to actually get the rhythm and balance of this sentence right. What Ricky and I look for in publishers, that's Ricky Beadle-Blair, who is the co-founder of Team Angelica Publishing, look for in writers we're interested in publishing is really maverick voices, outsider voices in some way, particularly queer and of voices of colour. People who have an unusual view of the world. Of course, you can come from quite hard places, but just have a very conventional mind. Or you can come from quite fortunate places and have a very unusual mind. We're more interested in people with unusual minds, I think, and we're also very keen to help represent the underrepresented. Oh, it's so impossible to pick favourite writers. There are writers, of course, who've hugely influenced me, of which James Baldwin's The Avatar, Richard Wright, Chester Himes, and Amiri Baraka have very much influenced me as writing political people. As a child, absolutely. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings is just this sort of epic storytelling that draws you along, that's very deft and well placed. Mervyn Peake's Gormenghast, similarly. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a zillion people who are wonderful, who are brilliant, of course, and all the time you're discovering new people like Craig Lawrence Gidney, who actually gave me a lovely blurb for HARK, but that kind of came out of me writing a fan letter for his book, A Spectral Hue, which is a haunting tale of an African-American artistic community out on the marshes and the strange art they make and the effects it has. So he's kind of that was a discovery this year, like Victor Laval. What advice would I give younger authors on the come up? I think my own observation for myself is write what you care most about. Find what the thing is that you most want to say and need to say, set in the setting you most care about, and do that, because writing is too much like hard work. Well, it is too much hard work to start from a compromised position. You know, if you say, well, publishers will like it more if I set it in Surrey and things like that, then to me it seems like you're likely to fail. You're very likely to fail artistically anyway, and I don't think there would be no satisfaction in writing something commercial that wasn't true to me, for instance. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with, there's nothing evil about chasing the markets, but I think as far as nourishing your soul, try and say what you most need to say. Toni Morrison said, write the book that you wish was out there. And I think she's absolutely right. I wrote Drapetomania, which is a gay love story set in slavery times, because there wasn't one. I wanted that book to exist. Well, there was no such book, so I wrote it. Possibly very presumptuously, but I needed it to exist, and I put the work in writing it. So I think there's that. And then just be very alert to the new technology, because our imprint exists because of shifts in technology, meaning that suddenly a tiny press with very little money through Amazon has a global window. People can buy our book in Canada, Australia, all of Europe, well, all of Western Europe, India. It can be Brazil, yeah. 20 years ago that would have been completely impossible. You'd have just sold to a few local outlets. So, technology changes what's happening and what you can reasonably expect. But it can also be very empowering. I mean, certainly if you're doing stuff that's really out there and nobody seems to like it, you can publish it yourself, and you can publish it yourself for very little money if you're prepared to learn a few low-key technical skills. So I think it's never been a better time to write the most personal, the most peculiar, the most out there, the most quirky book you want, because now if there's 25 people in the world who want it, then maybe they could all buy it. So I think be hopeful about everything except money, and money might happen. Certainly that's been my experience.